Josh was at my house last night, and in the paper these days he's got he's got the work phone. I haven't heard how fast it is. And he's like way has nothing to do with DOE. He said, actually, officially in the last they did announce it because they're money for DOE. But the paper announcement did not say that. Which also reinforces my opinion that
We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. We hope you'll find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. If you're watching online, please sign into the chat box so that we might know who's attending, and it will enable you to put in your joys and concerns. I'm Ron Goen. I will be assisting Reverend Kevin Carson in the service this morning. The tech person this morning is Vic Allen. Jessica Coopers is providing music. And the time for all ages will be by Marty Carson. Announcements. Please write your joys and concerns on a slip of paper back there with in the corner. And let's see. I think book club is on the 19th. And this morning is second Sunday potluck. So after the service, enjoy good food. Please silence your cell phones. Any other announcements? Okay. Well, it's now time for the community greeting. So, everybody stand up.
think I've got.
Okay. Is it time?
Yeah, it's kind of. People are really popular this morning so far. I go ahead and ring the little bell. Yeah.
So, is the little bell down here?
It's there somewhere, I think. I got a little bell somewhere. I don't know where it went.
I don't
There.
know.
Nope.
I
Well,
don't see it. So,
I think maybe they're settling down.
okay. All right. We now let us prepare ourselves for worship. Calm our hearts, our minds, our breathing. Breathe deeply in and out, listening to your breath as I ring the peace bowl 3 times. We will begin our service with the prelude. I should mention that even if you didn't bring something, everyone is welcome. There will be plenty of food, I'm sure, with the potluck downstairs. Okay. Our church's covenant helps us remember why we are a part of this faith and why we give our time and resources to this congregation. If you so choose, please recite along with me the covenant that this congregation has chosen to live by in the program. Love is the spirit of this community and serves its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now light the chalice. As we ignite this flame, may it represent the warmth of love, the clarity of wisdom, and the transformative power of community. Let it guide us on our journey of shared exploration and understanding.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our call to worship this morning comes from Mother Teresa. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put in the doing, a lifelong sharing of love with others. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
This morning I bring to you a tale from the Passamaquoddy people of Maine and New Brunswick. This is the story of the girl and the Chenoo monster. The Chenoo monster is something like a Wendigo. One autumn, in a place that is snow called Canada, where the old days the people of the Passamaquoddy lived, a girl and her 3 older brothers went to the forest to hunt for game to feed them over the winter. They found a good place to make camp, and they built a wigwam. Since she was the youngest, each morning after her 3 older brothers went hunting, the girl took care of the camp, gathered fresh firewood, repaired holes in their wigwam, and prepared dinner. Before nightfall, the brothers would return, carrying the game they had captured. Over dinner, they would all share stories of the day's adventures. One night, At dinner, the brothers were silent. "Why are you all so quiet?" asked the sister. "Today I saw strange footprints in the north," said her eldest brother, "like those of a man, but much larger." "So did I," said the brother who ventured south. The third brother, who also hunted in the west, he nodded in agreement, for he had seen them too. No one needed to say anything else, because they were all thinking the same thing. A Chenoo must be nearby. The cruel, brutal, giant cannibal from the far, icy north. After a tense minute, the eldest brother smiled and said, "Ah, it must have just been the tracks of a bear." And they all laughed with relief and joked how they had been fooled by mere bear tracks. The girl did not laugh. She too had seen tracks when she gathered berries to the east, and knew they were not the tracks of a bear. Before sunrise the next morning, the brothers left to hunt. But the girl did not tend to her usual tasks. She cleared the wigwam and piled each bear skin that she and her brothers slept on in a single pile in the center. Beside the bearskin pile, she laid baskets filled with berries and fruit. She gathered fresh firewood and then sat by the fire and waited. While the sun was still low in the sky, a very large shadow was cast over her fire. Out of the woods stepped the terrible Chenoo monster. Huge and horrible looking, he looked fiercely at her. The sister smiled pleasantly at the beast and said, "Grandfather, my heart is glad that at last you have come to see us. Where have you been for so long? I have prepared a fire for your lunch. Or perhaps you would like to lay down inside first and rest. Your bed is made, and there are baskets of fruit by it. You look tired from your travels." The Chenoo monster was amazed beyond all measure at such a greeting, where he expected screaming and yells and prayers for mercy. In quiet wonder, he let himself be led into the wigwam. The girl said she had brought a suit she had stitched to fit him. She told him to dress himself and be cleaned. He did as she told. He sat in the wigwam on the bearskin bed. He did not lie down, but he looked sad and kept quiet. She rose and went out. She kept gathering wood for fire. The Chenoo monster rose and followed her. She was in great fear. "Now," she thought, "now my death is near. He will kill me and he will eat me." The Chenoo monster said, "Give me the axe." She gave the Chenoo monster the axe, and he began to cut down the trees. She had never seen such a chopping. Great pines fell right and left like summer saplings. The boughs were hewed and split as if by a storm. Soon the pile of wood was twice as high as the top of the wigwam. The girl cried out, "Grandfather, grandfather, there's enough firewood. You must be tired from all your chopping. Please, please rest." So the Chenoo monster laid down the axe, walked into the wigwam, and sat down on the pile of bearskin rugs, still in grim silence. The girl continued to gather wood and remained silent outside the lodge while he slept. Before darkness fell, her 3 brothers returned from their hunt. She walked quickly to them, and with a fierce look, she said, "Brothers, you will be pleased to know that our grandfather is in the tent." Surprised, they started to object, but she firmly held her hand outstretched and said, "I am sure grandfather will be glad to hear all about your adventures later. But first we must be silent and give him time to rest." Well, at that moment, the huge hairy head of the Chenoo monster looked out of the wigwam. Before her brothers could cry out with alarm, the girl said with a smile, "Grandfather, you have awakened. I'm glad because now your grandsons have come back and we can all have dinner." Turning to her brothers, she said with a light voice as she could muster, "And how was the hunt today, brothers?" "Not so good," gulped one of the brothers, staring fixedly at the Chenoo monster. "All I have is this hare." "And I got a goose," mumbled her second brother, staring also at the Chenoo monster. "I got a deer," offered her third brother. The Chenoo monster spoke. "Granddaughter," he said, "have your brothers brought no other game?" The Chenoo monster is always hungry. Whatever your grandsons have hunted today," said the girl, "I will cook for your dinner tonight in honor of your visit." The Chenoo monster said nothing, but disappeared into the woods. When he returned, he carried 3 full-grown moose, 1 under each arm and a third wrapped around his shoulders. That night, they enjoyed a feast like no other since they had set up camp. When it was time to sleep, the Chenoo monster was so big that he filled the wigwam, so the girl and her 3 brothers had to lay down on the dirt outside. But it was more than the roots and the rocks underneath that disturbed their sleep. Each one lay awake all night in terror of the Chenoo monster. In the days that followed, they began to realize the Chenoo monster was useful to have around, as he could hunt better than 20 grown men. After a few days, he built his own wigwam nearby, and the brothers and their sister moved back into their own. He ate most of what he captured, but there was plenty of bear meat and deer left over for the rest of them, and the pile of skins they had been saving for trading grew and grew so high that before long they began to worry it would take many trips to transport it all in their canoe. They stopped worrying that he would eat them, though the chances of dying by accident were still quite high, since he swung trees around like kindling and didn't watch where anything would smash, and the 3 brothers and their sister were far too polite and respectful to correct him about anything. Eventually, the winter days warmed into spring. One day, the girl said, "Grandfather, soon it will be time for us to return to our village." "I would like to come with you," said the Chenoo monster, "but your people would scream if they saw me. I need your help." "Of course, Grandfather, anything at all," said the girl. "Build me a sweat lodge and bring hot coals to it." Well, the girl was surprised he would ask for this, since she knew the Chenoo monster was from the icy north and always sat as far back from the campfire as he could. Still, they built the sweat lodge, and when it was finished and they had brought plenty of hot coals in, the Chenoo monster went inside. The sweat lodge pulsed with an orange glow from the heat of the burning coals, but the Chenoo called out, "Bring more hot coals." They did this several times. The girl heard the Chenoo monster moan and cough, and then she heard no more sounds. "Grandfather, are you all right?" she asked. Yes, said the Chenoo monster in a voice they barely recognized. "Bring more coals." So they brought more hot coals to the sweat lodge and stood a great distance away as it was searing with heat. After many long minutes, the door creaked open, and out stepped what must have been the Chenoo monster. Yet he seemed much more like a normal, very old human man, hunched over and wrinkled, with a white beard that reached to his knees. His wounds had healed. His teeth no longer grinned wildly all the time. The expression on his face seemed gentle. He leaned over and coughed and out spat a piece of ice in the shape of a man. The girl knew what this must be. It was well known that the heart of the Chenoo monster was made of ice, and that it was shaped like a man. This icy heart is what had made him so fierce. "Throw it in the fire, grandfather," she said, and he picked it up and threw it into the campfire, but it was so fiercely cold that it had put out all the flames. The girl picked it up and threw it into the campfire again, but again the flames went out. Now the brothers chopped the icy heart into fragments with a hatchet, until bit by bit they threw a piece in and the little piece melted. They threw a piece in and the little piece melted. And the man who used to be the Chenoo monster smiled. "Let's go," he said. So they hauled their piles of bear and deer skins and baskets brimming with dried meat back to their village, where they traded the skins for whatever they wanted and shared the dried meat with everyone. And they all lived happily together for many, many years. And that is the story of how kindness of one girl melted the heart of the savage Chenoo monster. And we will now sing out the children.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Time now for our joys and concerns. Reverend Kevin will light a candle as I read these. From Cindy, a joy for the great women's group last Friday evening at Molly's house. Please consider joining us in March. From Anonymous, a sorrow. I am struggling with my relationship and don't know what to do. Sad. A joy from Aaron. New breakthroughs, clarity, and a new path forward. That's a very good one. And from Bill, a joy. Alex and his partner Kevin are getting married Friday, Valentine's Day. Are there any joys and concerns in the chat box? No. Reverend Kevin will light one additional candle for those joys, concerns, and sorrows that we hold in our hearts.
Well, our reading this morning comes from the book Compassion and the Individual by Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama. Because we all share an identical need for love, it is possible to feel that anybody we meet, in whatever circumstances, is a brother or sister. No matter how new the face or how different the dress and behavior, there is no significant division between us and other people. It is foolish to dwell on external differences because our basic natures are the same. Ultimately, humanity is one, and this small planet is our only home. If we are to protect this home of ours, each of us needs to experience a vivid sense of universal altruism. It is only this feeling that can remove the self-centered motives that cause people to deceive and misuse one another. If you have a sincere and open heart, you naturally feel self-worth and confidence, and there is no need to be fearful of others. I believe that at every level of society,
familial, tribal, national, and international, the key to a happier and more successful world is the growth of compassion. We do not need to become religious, nor do we need to believe in an ideology. All that is necessary is for each of us to develop our good human qualities. I try to treat whoever I meet as an old friend. This gives me a genuine feeling of happiness. It is the practice of compassion. An offering to support the mission of this church will now be given and gratefully received. Lovely. 4 years ago, the title of one of my early sermons here in Idaho Falls posed the question, "Where is the love?" That sermon was a commentary on the fact that at the time, neither the word love nor even the expression beloved community was included in the language of the 7 principles of our Unitarian Universalist faith. I noted that it was, however, common to hear the word love mentioned in the covenants we routinely recite on Sunday mornings, and this is still the case. Just a few minutes ago, for example, we began reading our covenant with the words, "Love is the spirit of this community." And just outside, near the road, we have a large, lovely banner that proclaims, "Love is the Spirit." Love has been foundational as a value of our faith from the beginning. But after more than a half-century of wordsmithing the language of our 7 principles found in Article 2 of the bylaws of our denomination, the word love was somehow consistently omitted. Last June, I am proud to say that our denomination finalized new language in Article 2 of our bylaws, and now love is at the center of our values. A graphic representation from the bylaws is on the cover of your order of service. But simply changing some words is one thing. A common understanding of the words is another. What does it mean for us as Unitarian Universalists when we proclaim that love is at the center of our shared values? If you know anything about the history of our Unitarian Universalist movement, you know we don't change our bylaws lightly or often, and even making a simple change can be an arduous process that is subject to much debate. Historically, I don't know if there were many proposed amendments that would have added love to the language of the bylaws over the decades. But from personal experience, I can tell you about a debate over including the phrase beloved community in a statement produced by religious education study group I was involved with in New England. This was the mid-2000s at the First Unitarian Church in Providence. And looking back, I only wish we had the same concerns today that we had then. A group of congregants got together to discuss the future of liberal religion and how we could respond to an increase in religious extremism in America and abroad, and policies of the federal government that were in opposition to our values as Unitarian Universalists, including the war in Iraq. The leader of the group was a local journalist, and he proposed the idea that we craft a statement which became known as the Providence Statement, expressing our values, concerns, and calls to action, and that we circulate the statement to other sympathetic groups for endorsement. Rhode Island was explicitly founded on the principle of religious freedom in 1636 by Roger Williams. So he thought the association with Providence would carry some weight. I thought it was a nice, but probably fruitless gesture. But nevertheless, we spent several weeks of meetings wordsmithing the document. One of the sections of the Providence Statement included the sentence, "We want to live in beloved community, free and in harmony with others of all faiths." Sounds pretty good, I think, and it certainly aligns with our UU principles. However, someone who was an active participant in our group, a longtime member, and a leader of the local Amnesty International chapter, felt that the phrase beloved community was, quote, too weak for a document that aimed at calling out injustice. I was honestly surprised, and I challenged the idea that the words beloved community were somehow weak in the context of social justice. I suggested to the group that we recall Dr. King's frequent use of the phrase during the civil rights era. Contrary to being weak, I believe that embracing the ideal of beloved community and the practice of love in the face of violence and hateful rhetoric that we see in the world is a courageous act. It is a rejection of the language of violence and bigotry. And for us today, I would add that it is a defiance of rhetoric that is poisoning our democracy and allowing those with authoritarian aspirations to succeed. In the end, I prevailed, and the phrase beloved community remained. But I could understand the anger and frustration she felt back then. And I can certainly understand anyone who has similar feelings today. But feelings aside, I think part of the problem we may have using the word love comes from a limitation of the English language. The word love in English is unfortunately ambiguous and greatly overused. It can refer to anything from the adoration of a parent for their child, to romantic love between couples, to having a particular fondness for some food, art, or music. It is less ambiguous in some other languages. Greek, for example, has 3 different words for love that have very different meanings. There is eros, which refers to romantic or erotic love, the kind that couples will celebrate this Friday on Valentine's Day. Then there is philos, which refers to brotherly or sisterly love, the kind of love we have for those whom we care deeply about. And then there is agape, which is usually translated as selfless or unconditional love. Agape is love freely given to another without cause or thought of personal benefit and without any expectation of love in return. It is this unconditional form of love, agape, that is the word for love in the Christian scriptures in their original Greek. And it is agape, for example, in the Gospel of Matthew, when Jesus says, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Jesus was calling for us to love our enemies unconditionally, because of their inherent worth and dignity as human beings. And when we do, we can no longer see them as enemies. When we say love is the spirit of this community, we are affirming that a combination of philos and agape exists in our congregation, a spirit of fraternal love that develops among us when we really get to know each other, and a spirit of selfless love that we pour out into the world in the hope of creating a more just and kind community for all. It is this idea of beloved community, a phrase coined in the 19th century by the American philosopher Josiah Royce and made famous by Dr. King in the 20th. It is an idea that embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in a time when others reject those values. But again, covenant statements too are just words unless we take them to heart and embody them in our actions. We like to say that our faith is about deeds and not creeds, and it is far more important that we act with a spirit of love in the world, and it has always been important for us to do so. From our liberal Christian roots, we inherited the value of viewing the world through the lens of agape. Our Universalist ancestors even promoted the idea that God is love, an idea that has been embraced, at least in principle, if not in practice, by many religious groups. And as our Unitarian Universalist theology became more diverse and inclusive, especially with the addition of Buddhist and humanist influences, we began to emphasize compassion, respect, acceptance, and justice in human relations, all of which are at least close cousins to the idea of loving one's neighbor as oneself. Our faith calls us to see others with heartfelt compassion. And unlike the unbridled joy we may feel with love, compassion is a mixture of both love and sorrow. It is a response to the condition of others where they are. And more specifically, it is an empathetic response to their suffering. We can see ourselves in them. And it is because we can empathize with the suffering of others that we can feel compassion, which literally means to suffer with. Love and compassion are not precisely the same, but a heart filled with unconditional love will undoubtedly respond to others with compassion. And given the amount of suffering at the heart of the human condition, I doubt we could ever pour out too much love and compassion on the world, but our faith calls us to try. Reverend John Spong, who was a retired Episcopal bishop and liberal Christian theologian, liked to use the expression love wastefully in describing his approach to faith. And I really like this idea, love wastefully. I think it sums up the true meaning of unconditional love for others, and it transcends any particular religion or set of beliefs. When we love wastefully, we cannot see the world divided into those who are worthy and those who are not. When we love wastefully, there is no exclusion or denigration of others on any grounds. The barriers that divide us become meaningless. When we love wastefully, there are no conditions or criteria to be met, nor should we expect anything in return. Love and kindness can even turn enemies into friends if given the chance. Just think about what happened to the dreadful Chinoo monster in our Time for All Ages story. In many ways, the work of doing justice is the great commission of our faith. And the new graphic of our values indicates that it is work that flows from our love for the world. I'm reminded of a famous line from Cornel West, who said, "Justice is what love looks like in public." For Unitarian Universalists, there is an inextricable link between love, and our desire for justice in the world. That is echoed in the new Article 2 language about justice, which says, we work to be diverse, to multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. Indeed, justice is what love looks like in public. I also believe our faith calls for us to love wastefully beyond our human relations. What about environmental justice and animal rights, for example? Can we also love the earth and all creatures who are part of the interdependent web of all existence the way we love our human neighbors? The biologist Edward O. Wilson proposed that we are biologically attuned to experience biophilia, which literally means love of life. He described this as the connections that human beings subconsciously seek with the rest of life. This love of life binds us to the myriad forms of life with whom we share the earth, and when we tap into these feelings, it moves us to want to protect the biodiversity of the planet. In our moments of despair for the earth and for our fellow creatures, I think it is important to learn how to allow this sense of biophilia to wash over us and nurture us, to strengthen our resolve. This is a major focus in the work of the relatively new field of eco-psychology, and I think it is a promising way forward for humankind. Back in 2008, our denomination launched a new campaign for social justice called Standing on the Side of Love, which has since been renamed Side with Love. It was born out of earlier social justice campaigns on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community, and it was a particular response to the 2008 mass shooting at the Tennessee Valley UU Church in Knoxville, Tennessee. You may recall that 2 people were killed in the shooting, and 6 others were wounded. And the shooter, who was an unemployed truck driver, filled with resentment, blamed, quote, liberals, Democrats, African Americans, and homosexuals for his problems, according to his manifesto. He decided that the local UU church would be a good target for his revenge. It is a cautionary tale for us today. The new UU social justice campaign that emerged would quickly become an overarching effort for advocacy on a number of issues by UUs across the country. And now, 17 years later, it still makes me proud to see those familiar yellow t-shirts and banners bearing the Side with Love logo at public witness events. They're the color of the stole I'm wearing this morning. I have seen them in Washington and New York marching on behalf of climate change action. I have seen them in North Carolina and in Providence marching for voting rights and a living wage. I have seen them by the thousands on a hot summer evening in Phoenix, Arizona, bearing witness for undocumented people outside of Joe Arpaio's notorious prison camp. I've seen them cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge during the commemoration of the Selma to Montgomery March. And I have seen them in numbers great and small across America at pride events and as Unitarian Universalists gathered in rallies for marriage equality, women's rights, and many other important causes. Some of our partners in the work of justice even started calling us, quote, the love people as a result. And our visibility quickly earned us a reputation for being people who showed up when we are needed. I think we should be honored to be called the love people in a time when compassion and even common decency seems to be in short supply. The beloved community of love, mutual respect, and care is, of course, still a work in progress. There are billions of people in the world who do not enjoy the justice, equity, and compassion we affirm. And those currently holding political power seem to determined to roll back any progress we've made and diminish the lives of people who are already in traditionally marginalized communities. We are called to always side with love when the rights and dignity of others is threatened. With our values to guide us and our faith to sustain us, let us love wastefully and pour out healing on the world. Love is indeed the spirit of this community, and it is at the center of our faith. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit once again and join in singing our closing hymn, number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Our closing words this morning are from the Christian scriptures, from the Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. You may remember hearing this at many weddings. It's the famous love passage. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
Please join me in reading the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.